God here. And it's football season. And it's like 100 degrees outside. Sorry about that. Welcome to Season 3 of Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoyseth and Dave Daba.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. It is a divisional round weekend. That is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave Daba up in Northern California. This is a very special edition of Gods of Odds. Thanks so much for tuning in. Brad, last time I checked, which was just a little earlier today, Ed Donatello was still the Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator. How is that even possible?
Hard to imagine, right? I mean, I have a couple forums that I go and I kind of fool around with, and it's more or less guys just bitching and moaning about the same things that they do every week, right? And so I said, look, you could replace Donatello with a McDonald's fry cook, and the worst that could happen is you go one spot down, right? I mean, they're 31st in the league in defense. You go down one spot with a fry cook from McDonald's, right? I mean, so I don't know what they're waiting for, Dave. It's a horrific defense. They got a lot of problems there. They got a lot of dead weight, and there's just not a lot of talent. They have to. It's got to be a pressing need, obviously, in the offseason for the Vikings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were some other coordinator firings today, and the biggest one being Leftwich is out with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Another one that took way too long to get to. I don't understand. I mean, does that mean Tom Brady's coming back, Dave?
I'm really honestly not sure Tom knows. That was, we've been saying it, or at least I've been saying it a lot this season, how bad the 10-yard passes were. And, you were down on him for the long ball. I sort of slightly disagreed with you about the long ball, saying, I think he can still throw that. But it's just somebody will make him an offer, but I mean, he's done. Yeah, he's not, at least he's not winning any more Super Bowls, and unless he went into like the perfect situation, perfect offensive line, fantastic running game, and two of the best wide receivers in the game and a good tight end, then Brady could have a chance again. But those things just aren't a reality in the world today.
Dave, I watched that game the other night. The Buccaneers threw 67 passes and ran the ball 9 times with a 45-year-old quarterback. That's just stupid. I mean, let's call it what it is. It's just dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. They just had they had nothing else they could do. I mean, they could have ran the ball 20 more times. And Brady, at the very least, maybe you catch him off guard with some play action passing, and something else positive happens along the way. But just an absolutely amazing thing. Yeah, elsewhere around the National Football League, you will not have Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh to punch around with the Denver Broncos, as apparently he has decided to go back to Michigan. Now, you're the Walmart family. You've got all this money. You just bought the Broncos, and you fly out to LA with your staff, your team of people. You have a full afternoon with Sean Payton. How do you even leave the room not making Sean Payton some sort of I don't think he's the greatest coach in the world, but with what's out there right now, Sean Payton would have been the first choice if I were in the Walmart family.
Okay, if we're going to get around to first choices, okay, the first choice of a story is how is Brandon Staley still the coach of the Chargers? Okay, I mean that was. I remember I'm watching the game and I'm.
I was like, "What's the over under on you
going,
getting it in the first 5 minutes of this?"
Right. I mean, I'm thinking to myself as this game is going on. The only reason I'm still watching this game mid-second quarter is because Brandon Staley is the head coach of the Chargers, which is going to give the other team a chance to come back and win. I mean, that's it. That's the only reason I was watching.
Yeah, it just crazy. And what do they do? The Spanoses get to, and the Spanoses, like I heard somebody say it's a great organization the other day, and I'm like, I don't know about that. But
they're renting a building from another team because they tried to hold the city of San Diego hostage for a stadium, and the people of San Diego said, no, out of here. Yeah. I live in Southern California. I routinely see people on the streets. Everybody to a person says they should still be the San Diego Chargers. I still catch myself every now and then saying San Diego Chargers. It's almost impossible. They're renting a half of a building. I don't. Staley's just a long list of a litany of things that I could go on with about the Chargers. It's not a great franchise. It never has been a great franchise. They've unfortunately had some great players and some really exciting teams over the years, but no, they're a long ways from great.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for them to get together, the Charger Mind Trust, if you can call it that, they get together and they go, I guess our problem was Joe Lombardi. It had nothing to do with the fact that they gave up 27 points. It's like they ignored. I thought Lombardi needed to go anyways, but they just totally ignored the defense, which is what caused the issues in the first place. I mean, it's not uncommon at all. Heck, I've seen the Philadelphia Eagles do this a couple times this year, where they play a really good half on the offensive side, and then they don't score. They score another field goal or something, and that's it. It's not uncommon in the National Football League for those things to happen. What's uncommon is giving up a 27-0 lead in a playoff game. That is uncommon. So what should you do? Oh, we should just blame the offensive guys.
And if I'm not mistaken, Staley is the defensive guy there. So
he is the defensive guy there, and I get it. I mean, Staley, like he didn't want to take himself out, and he wants to hold on, and he seems like a nice enough guy, and he seems like he's smart enough. And I saw somebody on a different show this week, which I thought made a really good opinion, which is, the problem with Brandon Staley is that he's learning on the job to be an NFL coach. And I just thought that was just a fantastic point, because that's what this has been like with him. Like we're seeing the kid make mistakes. And in some cases we're seeing him repeat those mistakes, which is equally as bad as a mistake in the first place. But that's essentially what we have going on here with this Charger organization. It's disgraceful. You know what else is disgraceful, Brad? I have so much that's disgraceful. The Chicago Bears, that Bears organization has a chance to redo Soldier Field. And instead, they have turned down this beautiful option to keep the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field, and they're going with a dome option outside of Chicago, downtown Chicago. I forget where. And it's a whole, build the park and have the restaurants and have all those things. But the renderings that the city of Chicago put together for a updated Soldier Field, which I believe had a retractable roof in it, were absolutely fantastic. And it's just disgraceful. It's another, it's bad enough that the Tennessee Titans have decided to move into a dome.
All right, let's move into this thing. All right, we got 4 games this weekend, Dave, and I'm looking at these teams, Dave. I don't really see any teams that don't have a flaw. I mean, there's something about each one of these teams where you could say, I have a problem with this team advancing, right?
Right.
But probably the least flawed team I can see is the Bills. And it's the Bengals at the Bills. The Bills are a 4-point favorite. If there is a flaw in the Bills, it's that every once in a while Josh Allen just gets a little too aggressive and just doesn't know when to throw the ball into the stands, right? And he throws it into a crowd. But in this particular game, as a 4-point favorite, to me, the big thing here is the injuries for Cincinnati. It doesn't look like their left tackle is going to play. One of their guards is now injured, and he's very questionable. They're very thin on the back end on defense. Guys going down in the last game. And I think I texted you during that game, Dave. It was like, I thought they were in really trouble. I thought they could lose that game to the Ravens. Because I was convinced that if Harbaugh scored for Baltimore at the end, they were going for 2. They were going for the jugular, right? And I think I texted you, and I checked with another buddy of mine. I said, something's just not right about the Bengals right now. They don't look good. And so, to me, this was. I think it's one of the easier the games of the week to pick. I know that it's hard to bet against Joe Burrow. He's a freakish quarterback. He's really good. I think he's a star for a long time. But I just think that lineup is really beat up right now. I don't think they're playing their best football. And if you believe in conspiracy theories, is there a better story right now than the Bills winning the Super Bowl, Dave? I mean, can you see Damar Hamlin maybe flipping the coin before the Super Bowl game? I mean, come on. There's not a better story out there. I'm taking the Bills. I'm giving the 4.
Josh Allen is turnover prone, and that would be like the biggest sort of concern I have. But I mean, like last week's Dave DeBaugh would be taking Cincinnati. This week's Dave DeBaugh is going to agree with you and go with Buffalo. I really want to take Joe Burrow in this. I'm so close, Brad, to flip-flopping on our picks. But I picked Buffalo along with 95% of the rest of the world to at least make it to the Super Bowl this year. I'm going to continue to ride that. My concern is with Buffalo is the running game. I don't think their defense is playing as well as we sort of perceive it to be playing. And so I think, this is going to be, a great game. And I could see Cincinnati, winning this game. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Joe Burrow pulls it off, but there is something there about, sort of team of destiny. There's a lot of other things that have happened with the Buffalo Bills in the last couple of weeks with Damar Hamlin. And I think that Buffalo at home is going to go ahead and get themselves a ticket to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on all those points, by the way. I mean, I think Josh Allen does turn the ball over too much. He kind of reminds me of a little bit of Ben Roethlisberger. He takes a lot of chances. He's not going to go down in the pocket. He's going to always try to string the play out as long as he can. And, and I love Ben Roethlisberger. I thought he was a great player. And I like Josh Allen, but every once in a while he kind of frustrates me because, he tries to throw it through 7 people to a guy. But the reality is that he's a competitor. They call him Mr. January. I guess he's been great over the years in January. I don't know why, but the Bills have never won anything. But I do believe that Cincinnati is just too banged up to compete in this one for 4 quarters.
Yeah. I agree. And, plus let's be honest about Cincinnati. They were at home for the second week in a row against a Lamar Jackson-less Baltimore Ravens team. Their offensive coordinator in Baltimore either quit or resigned. I forget which one it was earlier today. Greg Roman, I think, is out there. So I like Cincinnati was really super. I know you got the big pooches showing up for an appearance.
What I got here, Dave. Look what I mean, the dog pound is what I got right here.
I want to know, Brad, what does it cost to feed them a month? What is it a Honda car payment?
It's not that bad, really. They look bigger than they are. They got the big puffy hair. They're only about 50 pounds, but I'm going to lock them outside. So you keep talking. I'll be listening.
Yeah, no worries. So just would be interesting to see what ultimately happens in this one. Brad, the Ravens are just a disaster right now, a self-inflicted disaster. And the whole Deshaun Watson guaranteed money contract, it's just the Cleveland ownership group is just ridiculous for giving that contract. And I respect the Ravens organization for saying, no, we are not going to give Lamar Jackson a guaranteed contract worth reportedly $250 million. So I think there's some compromise there. We'll give you 3 years with 2 additional years that aren't guaranteed. And I think they could have probably gotten the deal done, but the Ravens organization got cheap for some reason, and they decided to mess with Lamar Jackson. And now Lamar Jackson is ready for, quite frankly, a divorce. And I think that's where things are headed. And I'm just shocked that the Ravens organization has sort of played Lamar Jackson this way. I mean, he's like one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch when healthy. And I totally understand that they're worried about giving him too long of a deal because of injuries. We had the example of the Minnesota Twins player who just went from $380 million to $320. 2 other teams offered him deals, didn't pass the physical. And then the Twins got him for 6 years at $200 million. And we joked about this last week and somehow amazingly passed that physical. I just look at this and I'm worried that the Baltimore Ravens think they're still living in Trent Dilfer era time and think they can win with a Trent Dilfer style quarterback, and you just can't anymore in the National Football League.
Look, I'm not a big John Harbaugh guy. I never have been. I can understand not wanting to give Lamar a long-term deal, but look, they're not winning without him. I mean, what's the alternative? What are they going to go out there and get? And when he's in there, he's an electrifying player. Yeah, I get it. Now that he's been injured a couple times, he's likely got his agent in his ear telling him, get out of bounds, quit running so much. And he's not a great pocket passer. I think everybody would agree on that. He doesn't look comfortable back there when he's in a pocket having to make plays. He's better on the run when he's running with his feet, throwing on the run, everything. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't know where the Ravens go from there. Tyler Huntley looked okay, but there's not a lot of weapons there. They've never surrounded Lamar Jackson with a ton of talent. I mean, Mark Andrews is a good player, but what else is there?
Look, Cincinnati last week was one quarterback sneak being run correctly from losing that game. And that's where I have fear sort of coming into this Buffalo game, where I think, the banged up offensive line in Cincinnati is a real thing. The Ravens defense generally I would say played better this year than Buffalo's defense did. But you get into the playoffs and you got a head coach that's essentially a defensive coordinator in Buffalo. I think they're going to definitely find a way to take advantage. All right, Brad. I have to move on to the "you were right, I was wrong" game. The New York Giants last week took down the Minnesota Vikings. You were right, I was wrong. You did take the Giants last week, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
And it's like everybody's talking about how Daniel Jones is going to get a huge, just absolutely huge, a contract when we have a chance. And I just thought that was just crazy, ridiculous stuff. By the way, I just got a text from my wife who said, "Can you go check and see who's walking around on the roof?" So, anyways, so I look at this game. This is Eagles at home against the the New York Football Giants. I think this is the end of the road for the Giants. As good of a job as Brian Daboll has done, making Daniel Jones look like a legitimate top 10 quarterback in the National Football League, they are not playing the Minnesota Viking defense this week. And not really sure exactly how on top of it, there's definitely, by the way, somebody on our roof. Not really sure how on top of it the Giants are going to be trying to take down the Eagles this weekend. So I'm going with the Eagles. It's still not sure about Jalen Hurts' arm, but Eagles it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that extra week off had to have been good for the Eagles because they were not playing their best football at the end of the season. Let's not forget 2 weeks ago, these teams met. The Giants played absolutely nobody. The Eagles played everybody, and that game went down to the wire. And Daboll gave them a lot of problems. That's where my fear comes in, is that I think Daboll's got the Giants playing really good football. That's my biggest fear. I mean, last year, Dave, we had up 3 on this weekend. Last year, we had 3 upsets. I don't see that happening this year. But this was my early kind of concern game. It's not anymore. I'm still going to take the Eagles, I think, at this point. But initially I thought, the Giants are playing good football. And I think Daniel Jones is a hell of a player. I mean, people don't realize he had like this number 7 or number 8 quarterback rating in the league this year. That's with Darius Slayton. Yeah. I mean, that's your top guy.
Yeah.
And so Kenny Golladay never turned into anything there. They don't have a lot of weapons. Daniel Jones has played really well. I think in many cases you could say Daniel Jones is the reason that team is where it is right now. And the defense is okay. They play hard. The Vikings, still scored on them. It wasn't like they were, a great defense. But I think the Eagles have had a week off now to prepare for this thing. They just saw them. Shouldn't be any surprises. No matter, I know it's a rivalry and everything, but still, the Giants had to play an extra game. That's a lot. And so now you got to get pumped up for another game on the road, the travel, everything. I'm going to take the Eagles. I thought that the line was a little bit high, 7. But I kind of feel like the Giants will keep it close until mid-third. And then I just kind of feel like the dam will break and the Eagles will break it open.
So you don't think the dam is going to break in the first half? You think this is going to be one of those sort of close heading into halftime, and then in the second half, the Eagles are going to pull away?
At some point, the dam's breaking, Dave. That's what I'm going to say. I think the Giants will hang around. I don't think they have the firepower to really to keep pace with the Eagles, and I think that extra week to prepare the defense and get them ready. The Giants there's just not a lot of mystery to that offense. And I just don't think point for point they can match it with the Eagles.
Yeah, I think the Eagles are So for me, I think like this is the dam's going to break in the first quarter and second quarter of the game. So I think when we head into halftime, it's going to be pretty clear. And then the Giants are going to maybe make things interesting. It's sort of the opposite of your opinion on it. But either way, we both come out with the Eagles winning. I am concerned about Hurts's arm. I don't think you and I have analyzed the doctor's report because we don't have access to it, as we're not supposed to because of the hip.
Daniel Jones is not running for 100 yards against the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay. Yeah. And so, what do you focus on? You focus on Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones running the ball. Yeah. And, Darius Slayton, if he beats you deep once, you go, okay, you tip your cap. But the Eagles are pretty solid overall defensively. They should be healthy. They know what's coming at them. And they got a lot of weapons on offense, Philadelphia. There's a lot of guys there. And AJ Brown was, he and Hurts were one of the better combos at the end of the year in the entire league. It seemed like every week they were connecting on at least one touchdown. So I got the Eagles winning fairly comfortably. Initially I thought, the Giants could keep this close, but the more I think about it, I just go, now the city of brotherly love, they're ready for some football this weekend.
Yeah, either that or they're just going to flat out lay an egg and Brian Daboll, greatest coach of all time, talk is going to begin next week.
All right, I'm going to go to my second game, Dave, and it's the Jags at the Chiefs. Two great coaches. I mean, flat out. Two of my favorite coaches. And they're going at it head-to-head in Arrowhead. I think I don't really like this game at 8.5. I mean, I think it's a lot of points. But again, it's the Chiefs with a week off to prepare for some guys that aren't really all that great offensively. I mean, you're not going to the quarterback there, your guy, can't throw 3 or 4 interceptions in this game and think that they're going to get away with it. This is not the Chargers. And so I just think they make too many. I think
when did Trevor Joey Lawrence become my guy? When did that happen?
Well, I like to call him your guy, right? And so your guy is not going to be able to throw 3 picks and a half and get away with it this time around. And Zay Jones is a great player, and I think the real key for Jacksonville is the running game with ATN. I still think he's a really good player. And if there's one thing we can say about the Chiefs, they're not very good defensive team. So I just don't think Jacksonville can keep pace with the Kansas City offense. At some point, again, the dam breaks. And as much as I like Doug Peterson, they're still a year away in Jacksonville.
Yeah. A couple weeks ago, I sort of got into some of the NFL stats a little bit. I try, Brad, not to geek out too much on the stats and the analytics and all that stuff. But what was interesting at the time, the Chiefs, believe it or not, were like in the top 3 or 4 teams in the NFL for sacks. And so it was like I was shocked. I was like, so that tells you that the defense, they know they're not that great on defense, but they're gambling and they're gambling successfully a lot of the time. And so you can get away with a crappy defense if you can strategize around your weaknesses. And, it sounds like, when you probably sit back and look at it, that's what, Kansas City's probably been doing for most of the season. It's something that Ed Donatella is incapable of doing. Has he been let go since the show started, Brad? Tend to not, talk about people's jobs, but that was just ridiculous. So look, Kansas City's going to win this game as much as I would like to, I think like if it was like a 10-point spread, I'd have to really consider, taking the Jags against the spread. But 8.5 seems totally doable and reasonable. I think we're all expecting Kansas City to blow them out. I don't know that they're going to blow them out, but I think they're going to win by 10 plus in this game. Sometimes Kansas City comes out a little sluggish in the playoffs, and we've seen that over the last couple of years. And you think that they have all of the tools on paper. It should be a Kansas City Chiefs, San Francisco 49ers Super Bowl. But there's still a lot of football left to be played. So, but I can't bring myself to take the Jags, on the road in Kansas City for the Chiefs' first playoff game of the season. Well rested. Mahomes has had a fantastic year. He'll certainly be the MVP of the league this year. And if he isn't, then we should never ever talk about that award again. So that's where I'm at with this one.
Hey, one thing I'm looking forward to seeing in this game, Dave, is I don't know if you saw the Chiefs' final game of the season that they played. They did this ring around the rosy when they came out of the huddle. That was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in football. It kind of reminded me like the Cowboys used to go and do this up-down thing back in the 70s when they came up the line of scrimmage. This ring around the rosy or whatever the hell they're calling it, that was one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen. And it's Kansas City. Andy Reid is kind of like this innovative guy that just kind of breaks the mold. And, I love Doug Peterson, but I just think Kansas City's ready. They're ready for the play. They haven't played great defense, but I just don't think Jacksonville's got the offensive weapons to capitalize on that.
Like when you have time, because, practices have been limited. There's very little hitting in the NFL anymore during practice. The amount of practice that teams used to have was like 2 or 3 times as much as it is today. And for them to spend an hour on that in practice, we got everything else. I've been wanting to try this ring around the circle thing. I would have loved to have been in the room when somebody drew it up and then presented it to Andy.
When they did it, they had to just be laughing, right? I mean, but I think there is a method to it and a madness to it. It's that these guys are going around. The defense doesn't really know where guys are going.
And it worked. Didn't they score a touchdown off of it?
Right, they did. I think it was a 2-point conversion or something.
I think my biggest regret is they wasted it in the regular season, and we don't get to see it.
I'm hopeful that we get it again this weekend, Dave. That's what I'm saying.
By the way, the Cowboys, right? Like back in the day, they would come up to the line and they'd go down and then pop back up and then down again. They still have that call, but the only time they ever use it is in their victory formation. So I've seen them in the last couple of years pull it out a couple of times during a victory formation. And I was always like, that's so fantastic that they still sort of have that heritage of the whole thing. All right, so I guess moving on, Brad, to our last game of the week. Cowboys at the San Francisco 49ers. And sure enough, earlier today, I was on another call, and a buddy texts me and says, "Hey, I got a ticket for you, free." And it would be, a good ticket, and I had to say, "Sorry, I'm out of the country." That was painful. This would have been probably a meet and greet with the Joneses along the way.
But you know what? Here's the deal, Dave. Yeah, it's a great game. It's a big game. Is there 2 organizations that a Viking fan hates worse than the 49ers and the Cowboys? I mean, really, I can't. I mean, the Packers, there's something about the Packers that
they're your cousins. I mean, like they put cheese on their heads, and I can't hate the Packers the way I dislike the the 49ers and the Cowboys. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, it's
like the team I grew up just hating was the Chicago Bears.
Really?
That was the one team in the NFL I just could not stand. Growing up, and just, I got in trouble for some comments I made watching a Cowboys game as a kid. So I was always a little bitter about that. But I look at, sort of back to this particular game. I mean, Dak had just, a fantastic game on Monday night. And I really struggle with that game being on Monday night. Still, we talked about this last week as well. And I just wasn't. I just wonder, was it just that the Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense was that bad? And then you start seeing the stats of this Dallas Cowboy team this year, and I can see why a lot of people are picking the Cowboys in this game. I'm definitely on the fence. This is definitely a pick I could I could switch pretty easily. You know how I feel about Kyle Shanahan sort of outthinking himself. It's gonna happen, Brad. Just trust me, it's gonna happen in the playoffs. I just didn't think it was gonna happen this week. But he's gonna overthink something. They're gonna try to do too many cutesy things. Like a Justin Jefferson pass back to the Kirk Cousins quarterback, who then it's like this is just a terrible play call. They're gonna screw up somewhere along the line, but I just
Dave,
don't think it's this weekend.
Your bitterness is coming out there. So
oh, yeah.
You're still upset about this whole deal. No, look, every year I went back. I did some homework this week, Dave. You'd be surprised. I went back and I looked at the last 10 years. How many teams on average that are the underdogs win in this round of these 4 games? And it averaged to be just a little bit over one out of the 4 games will be an upset.
Yeah.
About 27% it was, or something like that, of those teams would win. And so I think this is the danger game. I really do. I know I've been saying it for a long time, but Brock Purdy is a quarterback that's played 5 games, and he has not seen a guy by the name of Micah Parsons yet, or the secondary of the Cowboys, which is very aggressive and makes a lot of plays. He made a couple errant throws downfield last week that he got away with because he was playing against the Seattle Seahawks, right? You throw those balls errantly against the Cowboys and it's going the other direction. That's just the kind of team they are. They're very aggressive defensively, and they make plays. And so I haven't seen him play against that kind of guy yet. And so to me, that's a danger zone. Here's the problem. Ultimately, I took the Cowboys in the 3.5. Now, I don't know if the Cowboys will win or not, but I thought 3.5, I think it's a field goal game. I just took the Cowboys just to have some fun, right? But I go back and I look at the 8 coaches this weekend. Here's the problem the Cowboys have. And 7 of those coaches are very engaged, and I think they're great coaches. And then there's one cheerleader as a coach, and that's Mike McCarthy. He's a cheerleader. He's not a coach. He gets all excited when they make a play, and then you see his face when things aren't going right. He's a cheerleader, Dave.
Yeah.
And the rest of these guys are coaches. And so that to me is the big flaw with the Cowboys. They don't have a leader on the sidelines. They got a cheerleader. San Francisco's a tough place to go and play. And but I do still think it's the tightest game of the weekend. I think the Niners had their fun last year against the Packers on this weekend when they upset the Packers in Green Bay. I wouldn't be at all surprised if the favor got returned this weekend. And then you got a really interesting game next week between the Eagles and the Cowboys, right? So yeah. I'm going to take the points. I wouldn't be surprised if San Francisco won, but I do believe it's a tight battle.
Brad, I don't know if you know this, but the lowest rated Dallas Cowboy cheerleader of all time is Mike McCarthy. If you had to rate all the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders of all time, like where would McCarthy fall in that list?
You'd like to see him with those white boots on that they used to wear, the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders?
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. It's just absolutely like the whole Cowboy thing. I mean, this is just absolutely fantastic. You might, not like what they've actually really done on the field in the last 30 years, but the fact that their values just kept going up and up and up, despite the fact that they hadn't won a playoff game in 23 years on the road or whatever it is. It's just shocking, like how our public perception of the Dallas Cowboy organization is amazing. So yeah, as a marketing guy, I certainly respect all of that. This is just like I'm still wavering, Brad. I'm so close to just agreeing with you, and taking the Cowboys just for the fun of it, but. After seeing the kicker have a meltdown last week, I've never seen anything like that. I saw somebody this week say, "Well, the problem was he wasn't kicking field goals."
Well, they got rid of him. He's gone.
They did. I feel bad. He had a really good season, and you just like I'm sure they came back and he went out and he tried to kick some and. He just has, he's a golfer and he's just suddenly shanking the ball. He went all David Duvall on us, and, fell off the planet. So, it sort of is what it is. But like Nick Bosa, the San Francisco 49er defense, the Wards on the team, it's a fantastic defense. I just, CeeDee Lamb, I'm just like, he's a 1C receiver. He's not quite there yet. I question, San Francisco should win this game. And San Francisco should win this game by more than 3.5. And I hope it's a great game. I'd have no problems with, Dak Prescott leading the team down the field and winning the game and being completely wrong about this. It wouldn't bother me at all. And it would be sort of fun to see, a Kyle Shanahan meltdown because it's coming. But I just think it's going to come in. I think it's actually going to come in the Super Bowl. I had Buffalo Eagles, I think, originally in the Super Bowl this year, and I think it's going to be Kansas City, San Francisco, right now.
Yeah, my comparison to Brett Maher is probably Rick Ankiel, who many people know him as an outfielder for the Cardinals. But when Rick Ankiel came into the majors, he was a pitcher, and he just finally he something hit him, and he couldn't even hit the catcher. I mean, he was throwing balls at the backstop, and now so they made him into an outfielder, and he's a great perennial, all-star game kind of guy for years and years. He was after that, but something happened, and he couldn't throw a strike. Or Mitch Williams, some would say, but Mitch Williams was just kind of always wild. But Brett Maher, that was hard to watch. I mean, I was watching going. And you could tell the third one where he overcompensated and he just hooked it. It was like, I've played golf, at a fairly decent level. I wasn't a great player, but I was a good player. And you just get in these modes sometimes where you can't hit a fairway and you over-adjust and you hit it the other way, and it's very frustrating. And so, yeah, they let him go and they brought in somebody else now for this week. But I think one of the problems I have with the Cowboys, Dave, is stuff like that. It's the little things.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're quite buttoned up enough to win a big game like this. And I think a lot of that falls on McCarthy.
Yeah. I'll agree with everything you said about McCarthy for sure. I think there's more to Mike McCarthy than meets the eye. I'll just say that. But there has to be, right? It can't be like a open shell like this. There's got to be something there. So, sometimes like good leaders, they come in all different shapes and sizes, Brad, and they all have different styles. And, some good leaders don't need to have their headsets on during a football game and still be, an excellent head coach. But in today's modern world of the NFL, we're used to seeing, the head coaches having decision-making occur, during a game. And we see very little of that with Mike McCarthy. Hence your cheerleading comment.
Yeah, but like I said at the beginning of the show, it seems as if the least flawed team right now, in my opinion, is the Bills. I watched the Niners game last week, Dave, and with 2 minutes left in the third quarter, Seattle was going in to score to take the lead. And it was a game that was well played up until that point. I think there had been one penalty called the entire game to that point. And then the Seahawks get called on a touchdown for too many people downfield. Remember that? The refs got into this deal where they called like 3 or 4 of these. They were very questionable. They were like 2.5 yards off the line of scrimmage. You can only be 2 yards downfield. The very next play, DK Metcalf gets held in the end zone. Should have been an interference call. It wasn't called. And then the next play, Geno Smith fumbles, and basically the game's over at that point, right? The San Francisco turns the tables. Seattle can't do anything right after that. But to me, that was a game where the refs just completely took the game over. But previous to that, it was a really close game. And that's where my fear comes in with these 49ers. They got a young quarterback. He's only played 5 football games. But it's the guy on the other side, McCarthy, that has me believing that the Niners are going to be fine. They're going to be playing next weekend.
I was loving the first half of the game last week with the Seahawks. I was texting.
I was texting like a madman. My fingers couldn't work any quicker.
Yeah, I was like, I also have a buddy up here who's from Seattle, and we were going back and forth, and then midway through the fourth quarter, it was like I haven't heard from him since. It's like radio silence, which I totally get. It just look, Seattle. See, Pete Carroll, I knew was going to come out. I knew they were going to come out and play well. I assumed the 49ers would run away with it at the end, which is basically what happened. But I go back to Nick Bosa. I go back to that 49ers defense, which is tenacious. Not so worried about Brock Purdy as I think a lot of other people might be. I think Shanahan has the majority of what they're asking Purdy to do under control right now. Shanahan will screw that up at some point with some trickery that was a bad idea. Purdy could have 10 interceptions already this year. The ball has bounced his way for sure. I think they're gonna lean heavily on the screen pass, lean heavily on the run. They're gonna have to take some shots. I wonder what the over/under is on Diggs getting a pick. What's the over/under on Diggs getting 2 picks in this game? Are they going to, is Dallas going to unleash Diggs and just say, hey, just, don't do what we've told you to do over the last couple months, which is stay back and prevent the big play. Don't go for the interception. I think I could see a pick 6 here with Diggs in this game. Dallas is scary, man. This is going to be a great game.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're going to see is something you haven't seen a lot this year of San Francisco, but it was very successful for them last year. I think they're going to run Deebo Samuel wide. They'll run him right at Micah Parsons. Try to tire Parsons out so they can keep Parsons off of Purdy's back. But I mean, look, Purdy's looked great. I mean, I have to admit it. That kid, he looks well beyond his years. I'm just a little fearful because he's played 5 games. I just haven't seen a lot of the kid. He really looks like a better version of Jimmy G to me. He really does. He throws the ball very similarly. He runs a little bit better than Jimmy G, but they look very similar in a uniform running around out there, I think. At the same time, Dallas, holy cow. I mean, it's their opportunity. I mean, it's always been a great rivalry, the Cowboys and the Niners, going back to way back when, right? And so maybe we see a new chapter of it this weekend. Maybe the Cowboys go in and get a win. I don't know.
There's no segue for this at all, Brad, but did you hear Live Golf signed a television contract today?
Oh, really? I did not hear that. That's very interesting. I was just thinking about golf. They keep showing me these commercials for the Masters and whatnot, and I'm thinking, wow, what's the Masters going to be like this year with half the players not playing?
Yeah, no, I think the Masters is still going to invite the Live players. I think it's a completely, as you know, completely separate organization from the PGA. So I'm willing to bet that everybody who still theoretically ranks well will get an invite. Yes, the CW, the network that brought you the Hills, is signed a contract. I didn't have time to read the details, the monetary, but it's got to be like the biggest. First of all, I didn't even know the CW was still around. But they went through that merger with Warner, the WB network, I think, a couple years ago. So a little bit of Live Golf for you on a Thursday afternoon.
Have you ever watched Live Golf, Dave?
I have. I've
watched it too. I'm not very intrigued by it. I don't care to see team golf. It doesn't interest me whatsoever. Some of the graphics they used, I saw online, and I don't know who they're trying to attract. And I watch it, and I saw the first tournament there ever was, and Phil Mickelson showed up on the first tee unshaven, and it looked like he had just had a rough night out, right? And so I know the guys like their freedom, they like their extra day off, and they don't want to be told to do with the PGA, but man, oh man, I just don't like the product. I've watched it a couple times, and I don't care about team golf. To me, that's not what golf is. And so I'm glad that these guys will be allowed to play in the Masters and that kind of thing. It'd be nice to see them again. But, most of the guys that originally signed up for that thing were on their last leg. They were looking for the last payday. And, I never quite understood the logic behind these people funding that league. I never got it. I never understood it. I understood why the guys did it, but I think they're really kind of cutting off their arms. I mean, who's going to sponsor these guys if you can't watch them, right? I mean, if I'm the sponsor for, Brian DeChambeau or something, and I'm paying him $100 million to wear my gear or swing my golf club, and I can't find the guy anywhere. I'm wondering. I want my money back, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The Live Golf League, which absolutely prides itself on telling you how much money they give to players to sign them to a contract, right? Like that was a big part of their whole $200 million to Phil Mickelson, $150 to Bryson DeChambeau. Literally, every couple days, a new huge multi-year contract came out to these players. So interestingly enough, as you were on your rant, which was fantastic, I was hunting to see if I could find a monetary value, and they have not released the monetary side of the deal. Just simply at this point just says there is a deal done with the CW, which has 200 television stations syndicated across the United States. I don't know. Is the CW part of the CBS group?
Dave, I have no idea. CW, it's CBs. I don't know. I'm not watching it, Dave. I don't care about watching team golf. It's silly.
Yeah. I looked at it and thought it wasn't so much as It got divested out of CBS. It's owned by Nexstar. It's the whole thing there. No different podcast. For a
Right.
different
Well, as
day.
you can see with me, Dave, it's getting dark.
I can see that.
Dark.
I can.
We're gonna have to close this thing out because I know you got to get to Finland. But man, the rain stopped. How glad are you about that? Right.
Unbelievably glad. I'm still. I've put all 4 of the football games on my calendar, but it's going to be challenging to catch these things live unless I stay up through the night. So I'll have to do my best to catch these. I mean, obviously, I want to watch them live, so I don't know if that's going to happen.
My son, as you know, is in France, and they're 9 hours ahead, and so that Vikings game was pretty late for him. I think it started out around 1 a.m. or something.
Yeah.
So he was sending me his messages through WhatsApp and stuff, and then about the second quarter, he said, "Dad, what's with the defense?" And I go, "Well, that's what I'm telling you. That's why I'm not excited about this team. They can't play any defense, right?" So I didn't hear any messages after the third quarter. It was over.
Oh, yeah, it was over. Well, anyways, we'll be back, next week. Probably get a recording in Mr. Hoysef on a Friday. As I should be back from my adventures to Finland. As I get closer to heading to the Antarctic, apparently. On that note, Mr. Hoysef, any final thoughts?
No final thoughts. Enjoy your weekend. I'm rooting for all the favorites myself. I'm in a little pool that I could win a little bit of money if the favorites all win. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Absolutely fantastic. Check out our big sports website at disturbance.live when you have a chance. But for Brad Hoysef over in beautiful Southern California, I'm Dave Daba up in Northern California, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports week.